Hello YouTube, today I will show you guys how to make a multi-threaded port checker in Visual Basic. I'm going to call it YouTube port checker, and first of all I'm going to rename the forum to forum main and change the title to port checker. Okay, so now on the form we're going to have a button, two labels. Where is it? Two list boxes and three text boxes. That already three? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video right here so I can finish up the GUI, and then I'll show it to you guys how it looks. So this is what it should look like eventually. So I put the text box IP for the IP address, text box port minimum for the minimum port, and same for the maximum port, a button check, and then the two list boxes will be USB for a list box for the open ports and a list box for the closed ports. This has a green 4 color and this one has a red 4 color. So now to actually start with programming it, we're going to double click on the button check button. In here we're going to need to do some things. First of all, we're going to make a private count, comma, max as integer. And now we're going to declare some like the IP address as dim IP as IP address, dim min port min port max as integers. And now you will see the IP address has this red bar under it. Just click on it and import system.net. And also a dim success as boolean. Now success will be IP address dot try parse txt IP dot text, so just the text box for the IP address, and it will have a IP as reference, and going to put underscore so it can be on the next line, integer dot try parse txt port minimum dot text and port min, and underscore integer dot try parse text port max dot text port maximum. Okay, so now it will say here IP address is passed as a reference, but it's not initialized, so no reference can occur here. So to fix that, we're just going to make it a loop back by default. Okay, so now it won't complain anymore with warnings. So if it's a so the try parse will just actually try to make it a IP address, and if it works it will return true, and it will put the IP address in this variable, and if it doesn't work it will return false. So if one of these is false, then success will be false, else it will be true. So now if success, wait, I'm going to use the other thing, if with double I, so that's a built-in kind of function. So if success equals true, then we'll do port maximum. Yes, port maximum is greater than port minimum, else we'll just return false. And we're going to set success equals to this. So if success equals to this function, and this will just go like this. So if success equals true, then it will execute this part, else it will execute this part. And here it will just say if the port maximum is greater than port minimum, just to ensure our minimum port is less than the maximum port, so we don't have weird things going on with some infinity loops as we're trying to reach the maximum port, but the maximum port is below the minimum port, so that's would else would be some weird stuff going on there. So if success else else we're just going to show a message box saying invalid configuration of IP or ports, something like that. You guys can change that to whatever you like, or maybe put it like here so you can already see if it's one of these or it's the port that's higher or less. Well, you guys can choose there. So if it's success, first of all we want to clear these just to make sure there is nothing in it anymore, else it will keep on adding in there, and that's not what we want. So once that's done, we can put our count to 0 and max equals port max. That's just for a later use, these counts and max. Now let's make a new class and call it port checker. Go back in here, dim manager as new port checker. So what do we want? We want to parse give it the IP address, the port minimum and the port maximum. Okay, and also we'll give it something special, but that's for later. Just going to put that later in there because we'll have something more. Now it will say it's not here yet, so we're going to make it public sub new IP address. Oh, IP as IP address, min as integer, max as integer. Same error here, just click on this, import, and then it's all fixed. Private IP as IP address, private min as private min, comma max as integer. Okay, we'll also need some event event handler here, so we're going to first make a event handler, port checked event args, which is going to inherit a event args, and just basically is going to put I think it's going to be the client, or just no, just the p as integer and p as boolean for now. I'm going to make it property port as integer and public property open as boolean. Me dot port equals p and me dot open equals p. That's everything for there. I'm going to save it on my desktop. Okay, that's done. Now we don't need that anymore. Now we can make a private port checked as event handler for port checked event args. Okay, this probably looks a lot like a events, because it's basically a event, but we're not going to make it a event because if we do that it's not going to work. And now we just need to put a ES event handler for port checked event args. Okay, so now me.ip equals ip, me.min equals min, and make sure you do not forget the me, because else it will fail, because our parameters are the same as our private variables, and that's not going to work. You don't need the me for port check, but we already used it for all the rest, so it would doesn't look good if you just don't use the me there. And in main it will now say there is something wrong here, because it does not have that yet. And just make a address of port checked. Now port checked will be like, hey, I don't have that yet, so we're going to make a private sub port checked, sender as object, and e as port checked event args. Okay, now we can go here and do some funny things here, because if e.open else at open port e.port at closed port e.port, these two does not exist yet, private sub at open port p as integer, private sub at closed port as integer. Now in here we're going to do something special, because we're going to make it multi-threaded later on, and then it will give an error with this as it's running on other threads. So to fix this, we're going to make a private delegate port adder ps port ps integer, I mean private delegate sub. Very important that you do that. Now, just to be sure and to not waste too much code here, I'm just going to straight away invoke it. List box open dot invoke new port adder. Okay, and now we're going to do address of new port adder sub, I mean this box open dot items dot add string dot format port 0 is open. Well, we don't need these private delegate actually, because I just found a better way to do it. Then I was going to do it a other way, but if this is not going to work, then we just use the other way. List box closed, port 0 is closed. Okay, very important that we do that. Now we actually need one more thing here, private object obj as new object. Pretty weird to instantiate a new object, but it's going to be for this sync lock object. Now put everything in here, and first of all we're going to do our count plus equals 1 if count is greater than max. Then we're going to do message box dot show all ports have been checked, and we're going to also, to visualize it, we're going to make a private sub change UI. I'm going to call change UI here and change UI here. Now what change UI is going to do, it's just basically going to enable and disable these 4 controls. So listbox close dot invoke new action sub listbox close dot enabled equals not listbox close dot enabled. Now you may think, wait, what is this? What will this go to? And now if you look closely, it will say listbox enabled, which is at the moment true, will be made to listbox close dot enabled, which is also true, but the not statement is going to change trues to false and false to true. So not true is actually false, so it's going to disable it for the moment. And here the same thing, we need to invoke it, because else we get these access from other threads, and we don't want that. Button check, and wait, we do not need these list boxes. I mean, we need the text box IP, text box port max, port minimum. Now just copy this. Okay, so that's pretty good. Count is bigger than that. Okay, so that's pretty much already all for this. Manager dot start checking. Public sub start checking. Okay. So now we're going to make the task itself port check task. Public sub new. Let's see, what do we need to check the port? So we're going to use a for loop for I equals minimum to maximum, dim port check task as new port check task, port check task dot begin check port I. Something like this we're going to need. Public sub check port ps integer. Going to need a IP as IP address, and probably the event handler. So es event handler port checked event args. So once that's done, we're going to make these private variables where we're going to store the IP as IP address and private port checked as event handler for port checked event args. me.ip equals IP and me.port checked equals E. Okay, so now it's really going to be starting this multi-threading. So first of all, we're going to use the naming for that. So begin check port, and this is going to be a function that is going to return a async result, and it's going to take a p as integer for the port and a private sub and check port, which is going to take a ARS async result. I'm not going to do that yet, but we're going to have to make a new class here. So in here we're going to make a new TCP dim client as new TCP client. So this does not exist yet, so we're going to import system.net.sockets. In the client we're going to set the receive timeout to 1 second and the client.send time out to 1 second. The longer you make this, it's going to take longer to return the result for this in our screen, and it's only going to do this if the port is actually closed. And now we're just going to need one more thing, a new class, async state, public property client as TCP client does not exist here, so add sockets, public property port as integer, and now just the public sub new with the C as TCP client and the P as port. Oops, it's going to be in a integer. me.client equals C and me.port equals P. Going to save that. We're not going to use that anymore. Wait. Here it's saying there's some errors here. Okay, IP, and we're going to pass the port checked. Okay, so now that's good. Save it again. Going to close that because we're not going to use it, and I'm just going to return nothing here. Okay, it's not important to do that, but we're actually not going to use this, as it will always do something else first. And now we're just going to need to do the last thing, which is here, dim. I'm going to put it here, dim state as new async state, a client and a P for the port. Now where actual code is going to begin here is here. What we're going to try is we're going to try to begin connect to our IP we just passed, the port, and a new async callback. with the address of and check port. Now we're going to pass in the state here and do all kinds of funny thing with that. If for some reason this would return a exception, which could happen, then we're going to do we're going to check if our port checked is not equals null, if port not, if not is nothing, port checked. Then we're going to do port checked equals and just open up the brackets, I think it are called, and just pass in me as the sender and a new port checked event args, with p is the port, yes, p, and boolean equals false because it's not going to connect there. So this is just that, and now in here we're going to do dim state as async state equals cast type from AR dot async state, which is a object as you can see here, and we're going to cast it to a async state, so it's going to be async state again. And here in this async state we can now get our client back as TCP client equals state dot client. Okay, and now we're going to need a try catch function again, because this is going to be throwing errors a lot, and because I think it's better to do it this way, so remove the exception stuff from here in the catch, and we're just going to do nothing here. We're going to leave everything for our final block. So what is this code that will throw exceptions? Dot and connects, and connects takes an async result, or that's our AR. This will throw errors. If none have been thrown yet, we're going to do this, and we just need one more thing, dim success as boolean equals client dot connected. We can't find our port, but that's good. Not good. Dim port as integer equals state dot port, and success. Okay, if it does not do anything, well, we're just going to put it there. So that's basically everything for the moment. So I'm going to try it out to see if it's working. I hope it starts working directly. Checking the ports. This is on my local computer. As you can see, it's 127.0.0.1 is the local loopback address, and it checked that. Now you want to say like, hey, can I check my public IP address or somebody else ports, or the ports from somebody else? Then yes. So what I did was I went to this site called DNS Watch and just looked up the IP address from some other sites, or you can use your public IP address or whatever you want. I'm going to scan the ports from 1 to 50 because else it will take up too much time. As you can see, port 0 is closed, port 25 is open, and you can also go look up the what each port means. I'm not sure about 25. You can see it takes some time here because it's trying to connect. As you can see, port 25 is the only open port here. So let me look up what's the IP address of Google. So let's just try this IP address from this guy here. Port 25 is already open. And the other ports are closed, most likely. But it's only 250, so there's no open port. So let's check 0 to 200. Let's hope it quickly finds a new port. And while it's busy, I'm going to try out this site. And this also gives me this IP address for Google. So I think that's taking way too long. So I'm going to try this one. As you can see, a lot of ports are open. Well, I know port 80 is for the site, and probably port 81 is also for some site. This is probably for the mail, I think, or some secure FTP, not sure. And all the other ports are probably closed, which I think is the case. It's only going to 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, and everything has been checked. As you can see, it's some ports return faster than other ports, as you can see here. So that's basically pretty much it. I'm quickly going to go over all of the code again so you guys can see what is actually going on here. So first of all, we're going to check our ports, and with this try parse we can check if it successfully converted a string to a IP address, and same for string to integer. And if everything is went successful, then we can go to success. This will be true then. After that, we'll set the success to, if it's successfully, then we're going to check if the maximum port is greater than the minimum port, because that's required for this. Else our maximum port will be standing here and the minimum, and then it won't work, or only one port will be checked at maximum. So that's not what we want. So we're going to check if that's the case, and if that's the case, then it will be true, else it will be false. And by default we will return false, because if it's false it will execute this, and that's also false. So if it's successfully, we will first off clear the list boxes and reset everything. Change the UI will just basically enable or disable depending on what state it's currently in. If it's already enabled, then it will disable. If it's disabled, it will enable it again. After that, we're going to make a new port checker with the IP address, the minimum and maximum port, and the port checked function, this one. That will be executed each time a new port has been returned. And then we just start checking and if it's not successful, we will just throw up something like, hey, it's invalid, it doesn't work. Let's go into this, go to definition. Okay, so we're going to create a new port checking task, this class here, and we're just going to go from the minimum port to the maximum port and start checking there. So let's go to this class. This class requires a IP address and the event handler. You might think, what is this again? So that's this code that will be put in there, actually, just for referencing anonymous codes basically. And then we have the check port that will start the begin check port. This will create a client with the timeouts for receive and sending to 1 second, and we'll store everything in our async state class. We will try a begin connect to the IP address on that port with a callback when it's done to end check port, and the states we're going to give it is this, the async state with our client and port in it, so we can know which client tried to connect and at what port he tried to connect. This method could throw a exception, so we're going to put exception there, and if the port checked is filled in, then we're going to kind of raise it and tell him, hey, the port has been checked. So this code here, it will, so I'm going to put it here. So it's going to say port checked me. So this port check task will put in this object, and the port checked event args will be this, the new port checked event args with our port, and if it's successfully connected, which is false, so then it will go to the, if open is false, so it will go to the add closed port. Okay, and at the end it will return nothing, as we're not going to use our async result here, but it kind of is required. Well, you could actually return our async result here, return this, and then you could play with it around here, but we're not going to do that. So if it's successfully done, I'm going to put this aside here for a second. If the port has been connected, it's going to execute the unchecked port. The unchecked port will have a async result in it, and for that we will from the async result we will get the async states and then convert it to our async states, so we can get our client back from it and a port. Also, we're going to check if it's successfully connected and put that in our success variable. We're also going to put another try catch finally statement, because the client.endConnect will throw errors if it did not successfully connect. We're not going to bother what these errors are, because mostly it's going to be a socket exception or a IO exception, because it could not do something with its returned or timeout. And then finally, this will always execute in a try catch. We're going to check if it ports, if our method, this one, our port checker, does exist, and then it will again then it will again go here, the me, it will say, hey, I'm the port check task and I just raised this in the port, and it is most likely going to be a success. So I think that's then basically it. Just a quick look at our checked event args, which inherits the normal event args and then just stores the port and open in here, and then that's basically it. So I'm going to go to one more little thing, which I'm going to try here to do here. Oops. So as you can see in my browser that I'm going to size correctly, you can go to this site, openportchecker.callbacks.com, and here you can see a other port checker I made with, which is far more info about ports and checking one port at a time, or the port range here, even on Softpedia. So you can go here, open it up, import, and go there. But the only difference here is that the source code here, which is far more, has been written in C#, as you can see. I'm going to try to open it, see, working. As you can see, it has a cancel option and all that kind of stuff, but it's also on Softpedia with almost 1.1k downloads here, and the source codes and stuff like that have been downloaded for 25 times. And you can basically go ahead and get the source code for this project here. I will also upload the source code for this one on MatthiWare or something like that, and I hope you liked it. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.